Hello and welcome to the first in a new series of webinars from GSA, where we put a spotlight on different regions around the world and take an in-depth look at the status of public and private 4G and 5G in the market. Today, over the next 45 minutes, we're focusing on the Latin American region, and I'm delighted to welcome guest speakers from two of the region's most influential regulators, Mexico's IFT and ANATEL in Brazil. To get things started, Jordan Cox from the GSA Research team will share the latest GSA regional data on the status of LTE, LTE-Advanced and 5G in both public and private networks. If you have any questions as we go through this data, please pop them into the Q&A box and Jordan and team will answer as many as they can directly, either during or following the event. After the data snapshot, we'll go into our regulator panel discussion, moderated by Jose Ayala, chair of the GSA Spectrum team for the SITEL region. We'll be joined by Alejandro Navarrete, head of the Radio Spectrum Unit at IFT, and Sidney Azeredo, Deputy Superintendent of Granting and Resources at ANATEL. The on-demand recording of this session will be shared with you immediately following the event. You can also download the presentation at any point by moving your mouse over the slides and clicking on the download icon at the top right of the screen. We'll also share a link to the full GSA report that lies behind the data snapshot next week when it's published. First, though, a quick recap on GSA. The organisation was established back in '98 to be the voice of the mobile ecosystem. With almost 100 members and associates, the work of GSA includes both gathering and sharing data insights and industry advocacy. GSA has focused working groups, including private mobile networks, 6G standardization, and the Fixed Wireless Access Forum, which itself has 56 members representing about 80% of the infrastructure, chipset, module, and CPE value chain for fixed wireless access. The GSA Spectrum Group comprises a team of 185 spectrum and regulatory affairs specialists from our executive member and member companies, and is subdivided into regional groupings as well as global teams that focus on areas such as high band, mid band, low band, and spectrum licensing. In parallel, GSA publishes over 160 reports annually based on data from our Gambod database. This unique database, and you'll see some of this data in Jordan's slides, can be accessed by all employees of every GSA member and associate organisation via the GSA website, and it contains the most up-to-date global data on 4G and 5G devices, networks, technologies, spectrum and chipsets. GSA Research tracks over 2,500 operators in the Gambod database, including data on over 580 public 5G networks, which are being deployed, evaluated, tested or trialed globally, as well as networks that are currently in the planned or licensing stage. If your organisation is a GSA member or associate, you personally have unlimited access to all this data, and you can use it to create slides and charts to support you in your daily work. Today, though, we're focused specifically on the Latin American market. And really to set the scene for the regulator panel later, we'll first turn over to Jordan from the GSA Research team to dive into the Gambod data and share the latest snapshot on the region.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Richard. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jordan Cox, a member of the research team here at the GSA, and I'm responsible for coordinating a number of the research projects the GSA undertakes, alongside populating our online database Gambod, which Richard just alluded to there. So this presentation is based on a number of different reports published by the GSA across the course of the year, such as our Public Networks and Operators Report, 5G Market Snapshot, Private Mobile Networks, and Satellite NTN, among others. And we will be looking more specifically at the current market snapshot for Latin America, specifically across a number of the GSA's research areas, as well as publishing its own Spotlight report next week. So these reports draw on public information collected by the GSA research team, alongside information provided by our special interest groups, specifically in regards to the data surrounding private mobile networks. So why are we looking at Latin America specifically? So over the course of 2024, the GSA will be releasing new region-based spotlight reports covering not just Latin America, but other major regions across the globe as we move throughout the year. giving a much more detailed overview of the LTE and 5G markets globally. So diving into our first figures around LTE, both globally and within Latin America, which, as you can see by the charts on the right, has clearly peaked in terms of mobile network operator launches. And as of the end of February 2024, the GSA has tracked 824 operators globally that have launched LTE networks, a net rise of only 7 new launches since the end of 2022, clearly showing that operators have turned their attentions to 5G moving forward. And since 2015, the peak year for LTE launches, the number of net launches per year has reduced from 122 to the just mentioned figure of 7, a drastic decrease. So now looking at Latin America more closely, the same picture can be painted. And as of the end of February 2024, the GSA has tracked 121 operators in 30 countries across the region as investing in LTE networks. And of these, 101 operators in 30 countries have launched LTE networks. However, when looking at the number of operators that are either deploying or have planned launches, the number of operators reduces drastically to 15 and 5 respectively, showing that in Latin America, much like other regions such as North America and Western Europe, the market for LTE has peaked and the shift to 5G is currently in progress, as I will cover shortly. So this shift can be expected as a number of market drivers continue to develop in the Latin American market, such as greater levels of consumer 5G devices and subscribers, and the reduced operating costs and higher efficiency of 5G networks for network operators themselves. So now looking at LTE-Advanced, which is sometimes referred to as 4.5G and was standardized in 3GPP Release 10. This technology enhances the capabilities of its predecessor, LTE, with capabilities such as significantly higher data rates, increased capacity, lower latency, and backward compatibility if needed with LTE itself. And when we look at the picture globally, the GSA has tracked 399 operators in 166 countries that are investing in LTE-Advanced technology. And of these, 358 operators in 157 countries have launched LTE-Advanced technology, showing that clearly its enhanced capabilities encouraged a significant uptake in the technology prior to the release of 5G. So looking again at Latin America more closely, the GSA has tracked 53 operators in 25 countries across the region currently investing in LTE-Advanced technology, or just over 13% of the total number globally. The number of launch networks stands at 46 operators in 24 countries, or just under 13% of the global total. Latin America, therefore, has performed rather strongly in the uptake of this technology. However, as the global market continues its shift toward 5G, a technology that offers even greater capabilities than LTE-Advanced, the number of operators planning future launches across Latin America is particularly low, with only 4 operators in 4 countries, such as Telefónica Movistar in Mexico and Peru, DirecTV in Colombia, and Dauphine Telecom in St. Martin. So now we'll investigate LTE's successor, 5G. And as you'll see from the chart, 5G has seen an accelerating uptake and investment from mobile network operators globally, picking up real speed in terms of launches, particularly since the end of 2020. And as of the end of February 2024, the GSA has tracked 308 operators in 118 countries that have launched or soft-launched 5G networks globally, which answers the question as to why LTE has seen a real downturn in the last few years. And for Latin America, the picture is generally the same as the global one, with strong uptake across the region. Currently, according to GSA data, Latin America has seen 64 operators in 22 countries, or 10% of the global figure, investing in 5G mobile or fixed wireless access networks, which is most of the countries and territories within the region. And then when we look at launch networks, the number does decrease somewhat, with only 26 operators, or 8% of the global figure, having launched the technology. Although this is a strong number of 13 countries across the region. And so looking toward the coming years, the numbers for 5G networks across Latin America looks very promising, especially when we consider the number of operators currently deploying the technology, which, according to GSA data, shows that 11 operators across 10 countries are currently deploying, pointing to an increase in launches over the short to medium term. And then alongside this, 6 operators in 5 countries are planning deployments across Latin America, which over the longer term could result in the majority of the region seeing commercialized 5G networks. And now looking at 5G standalone, which is seen as the next step in 5G technology, and which, unlike 5G non-standalone, which is present in many markets today, does not rely on a core network that is still largely the same as during the LTE era. 5G standalone does carry a number of benefits over non-standalone, such as improved reliability, lower latency, enhanced coverage, stronger indoor signals, and more advanced security software. However, in spite of this, its uptake, as you can see from the chart, has not been as comprehensive compared to non-standalone networks, which may be due to many non-standalone networks still offering higher upload and download speeds. And so globally, since the end of 2022 to February of this year, the number of operators investing in 5G standalone has seen a net rise of only 13, with 124 operators in 58 countries investing in 5G standalone at the end of last month. And so when we look at Latin America, the figures are particularly low as of the end of February 2024. Only 6 operators in 3 countries are investing in 5G standalone, of which 5 operators in 3 countries have launched the technology, such as TIM and Telefonica in Brazil and DirecTV in Colombia. So in at least the short term, it looks as though little change will happen for 5G standalone in Latin America, with only one other operator, Movistar in Colombia, currently piloting the technology. So now looking at private mobile networks. And as of the GSA's latest private mobile network update in February 2024, the advancement of the private network industry continues to grow globally. And as you can see from the chart on the right, the rate of investment is now truly global. To date, the GSA has identified more than 50 equipment providers that have been involved in the supply of equipment for private mobile networks based on LTE or 5G. We have also identified more than 66 different telecom network operators who are also involved with private mobile network projects. And we have also seen cloud providers, sometimes referred to as hyperscalers, offering private network solutions, sometimes in partnerships with other operators or network suppliers. Their ability to exploit mass-scale cloud infrastructure and their existing presence in commercial enterprises is likely to drive additional growth in the private mobile network market. And so as of February 2024, the GSA has been able to categorize 1,384 different customers deploying private mobile networks, which are located all around the globe. This figure is up from 1,279 in the previous update during 2023. So of these references, 438 are named, with 946 being anonymized in the data, which means that over 68% cannot be found on the public domain. So in terms of geography, private networks are deployed in 77 countries around the world, including much of North America, Europe, and Asia, and increasingly across Africa. It should be noted that where organizations have subsidiaries in different countries or territories deploying their own networks, each subsidiary is counted separately. So now looking at Latin America specifically, the GSA counted 87 unique customer references, making up 6.2% of the global total within the region. We mainly see them in Brazil, Mexico, Peru, and alongside, but in much smaller numbers, Chile, Argentina, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic. So when we take a deeper look into the private mobile network figure within Latin America, we see a slightly different picture to that of the rest of the world. Globally, the top vertical for private network deployments is manufacturing, followed by education and mining. And although both manufacturing and mining are still two of the top three verticals in Latin America, the order is very much changed. Mining is the largest vertical with 30 unique customer references. Now, of course, this may be of little surprise, especially with countries such as Brazil having very large mining industries. This is followed by manufacturing with 19 references and seaports and oil and gas with 8 references each. Interestingly, despite performing strongly globally, education only currently has 1 reference across Latin America. Now, other verticals that have seen strong uptake are power utilities, maritime, and defence and peacekeeping. Again, perhaps pointing to the large industries based on natural resources and their exports within Latin America itself. So now moving on to the recent picture of spectrum allocation across Latin America. And since the beginning of 2022, it can be said that Latin America has seen strong results for spectrum allocations and auctions, successfully concluding at least 6 according to GSA data, ranging from 700 megahertz to 3.5 gigahertz in countries such as Argentina, French Guiana, Guatemala, St. Bartholomew, St. Martin, and Uruguay. Now, the price of these auctions has varied greatly. The recent October 3.5 gigahertz auction in Argentina received the highest price, raising over $870 million US. Whilst in contrast, the 700 megahertz auction in French Guiana raised just over $3.9 million US. So looking over the course of 2024, we are expecting new and rearranged auctions to take place in a number of Latin American markets, such as El Salvador and Brazil. So finally, we look at the continuing 2G and 3G switch-offs, both taking place globally and in Latin America itself. As of the end of February 2024, globally, 119 operators across 58 countries have either completed, are currently in progress, or have planned 2G or 3G switch-offs, with the likes of BT or EE and Vodafone in the UK and Vodafone Australia being the most recent to switch off their 3G networks globally. And when we take a closer look at Latin America, although in the very early stages, we are beginning to see movement in legacy networks being retired in favour of newer and more efficient LTE and 5G networks. As of the end of February 2024, Telecom Argentina, Digicel in the Cayman Islands, and Claro and Millicom in Colombia are the operators that have completed either 2G or 3G switch-offs across Latin America. And Chile, meanwhile, looks to be following closely behind in switching off its legacy 2G networks, with the country's 2 major operators, Entel and Movistar, both planning to switch off 2G over the coming months and years. So as more consumers move away from 2G and 3G devices across Latin America and operators continue to upgrade their networks, we can expect to see greater switch-off activity within the region over the course of the next 2 to 5 years. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'll hand over to Jose for the panel session. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Jordan. So Jose and Sidney and Alejandro can now join us on the stage. He's just on his way.
I hope you can listen to me now. Okay, good. So, well, thanks for the great report, Jordan. It is obvious the high-speed digital connectivity based on LTE and 5G technologies is a fundamental tool to achieve greater economic growth and improve quality of life in Latin America. 4G was introduced early in the past decade, and according to the report that we just saw, there are today more than 121 operators investing in LTE in 30 countries. The expansion is also continuing with the evolution towards LTE-Advanced, with more operators investing in this new technology. On the other hand, the first 5G services were launched a few years ago in leading Latin American markets. And after a big round of countries award the new spectrum for 5G in the past 2 years, 5G rollouts are increasing at a very strong pace, with 64 operators investing in 22 countries. More countries will award spectrum in the present year, so rollouts will even increase more. But to reach the highest benefit of these technologies, our industry requires more spectrum, which is the oxygen of the networks, and also smart regulatory strategies. So we have invited 2 leading regulators of a region where 4G and 5G services have been successfully introduced. And we hope they can share the best experiences in their countries that can make a reference for the rest of the region. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Sidney Azeredo from Brazil regulator ANATEL. He has been working in the planning, deployment, and operations in maintenance of telecommunication networks. He joined Brazil regulator ANATEL in 2007, and since 2019, he's been working as advisor in the Superintendency of Grants and Resources for the provision of telecommunication services. Also, I would like to welcome Mr. Alejandro Navarrete, who is the head of the Radio Spectrum Unit at the IFT regulator in Mexico since 2014, where he directs the planning, administration, and optimization of the radioelectric spectrum, including bidding processes and orbital resources. Alejandro previously served as the head of Radio and Television Systems Unit at the IFT and as the Deputy General Director of the Radio and Television System Unit in the former regulator COFETEL. So I wish to welcome both of them. And first, I would like to give Mr. Navarrete a warm welcome, and also he will share his opening statement with us.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for inviting me to this regulator panel. Since we don't have too much time, I would like to do a brief overview of what's going on in Mexico regarding 4G and 5G. As some of the hallmarks in Mexico, we have 4 major network operators. One of those operators is already sharing its last mile spectrum with other major operator. And we also have one wholesale only operator in the country. All of them provide 4G services and 4.5G services in Mexico. 4G represents more than 88% of all mobile traffic in Mexico. So I think that's also a good figure to think in the near future about 3G, 2G and 3G switch off, but there's no specific plans for that in the near future. Of these 4 operators, 3 of them are already providing 5G services, covering more than 50 million potential users in Mexico. At IFT, we are planning to launch an auction in this 2024, which includes low band and mid band spectrum. We're talking about around 300 megahertz of low band and mid band spectrum, including the 600 megahertz band. We're planning to launch this auction process during the third quarter of 2024. It's important to say that we still have the challenge of having very high annual fees for the spectrum, as the Congress hasn't lowered those fees. So that's a challenge that we have in assigning more spectrum. Regarding private networks, we see a growing demand in Mexico. At this point, we have assigned more than 10 authorizations for secondary use spectrum, all of those for 4G. But we have ambitious plans to grant concessions for private networks through auction processes in two different categories. First, private network concessions directly to the manufacturer, to the final user, and also commercial use concessions, but only for private network uses. So with these three figures, secondary use spectrum, private network concessions, and commercial use concessions for private networks, we think that we will have all the alternatives needed for providing spectrum also for private networks. And I would like to stop at this point in order to let Sidney to express his message as well. Thank you, Jose.
Well, thank you very much, Alejandro. Now we give Mr. Sidney Azeredo Nince the opportunity to make an opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank GSA for inviting ANATEL for this 4G and 5G LATAM webinar. I am representing our president, Carlos Baigorre, who is supposed to land from Geneva during this webinar. So, in my opening remarks, I will highlight some big figures about the 4G and 5G mobile networks in Brazil. First, our 4G networks, the deployment started in 2013. There are 4 national operators using mostly 2.5 gigahertz, 1800 megahertz, and 700 megahertz bands. Now, there are 194 million connections and about 322 smartphones certificated. Related to our 5G networks, the deployment started in the second half of 2022 with 3 national operators and 4 new regional operators using mostly 3.5 gigahertz and also 2.3 gigahertz bands. There are about 22 million connections in 12.5% of the cities and about 180 smartphones certificated. That's our big numbers of the 4G and 5G networks in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Azeredo. I think both countries have made significant progress in the deployment and adoption of both technologies, 4G and 5G, and you have a significant experience to share with administrations and industries all over the world. Let's start with the first question we have for you. The first one is, as we all know, the recent World Radio Conference identified important spectrum for IMT in the mid-bands, which might help in the evolution of 5G networks in the rest of the present decade. The first question, well, this is for both. Let's start with Alejandro. Which of these bands identified at the WRC-23 might be considered for in the spectrum plans in your country in the medium term?
Thank you, Jose. Well, first of all, 3.3 to 3.4 gigahertz that band was already identified for Mexico, and so now it's generally identified for IMT. So we are already using that band for IMT. 3.6 to 3.8, we might consider that, but it's important to say that we have fixed satellite services in that band as well. So one thing that we are looking at is see if we can use a spectrum from 3.45 to 3.6, maybe all the way to 3.7 for private networks with certain technical characteristics in order to protect the fixed satellite services as well. So those bands we are considering for 5G. We also are interested in see what's going to happen with 10 gigahertz, and of course, and I think this is important to say, Mexico and Brazil identified the upper part of the 6 gigahertz band for IMT. It's important to say that that doesn't mean, at least in the Mexican case, that we have already plans to use that band for IMT. It's only a matter of having the option open in the future after making a final decision of what Mexico is going to do with the upper part of the 6 gigahertz band. But if we decide at the end that we are going to use that for IMT, the good news is that it is already identified for IMT in Mexico as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you. And now, Sidney, it's your turn to share the experience in Brazil.
Okay. We in ANATEL have decided on 2 approaches. First, at this very moment, we are consulting on the needs and conditions for future use of the currently used bands. There will 4G and 5G coexist in the long term, or only 5G, in which bands? So we are consulting the market to feel what's the perception of this future use of the currently used bands. Second, of the new bands. Recently, we have already identified new bands for IMT. 90 megahertz in 1.5 gigahertz and 120 megahertz in 4.9 gigahertz. Additionally, we have plans to use 10.5 gigahertz, as already said by Alejandro, and we will follow closely all the studies derived from the WRC 23 decisions. Upper 6 gigahertz band, the new mid-band that it was decided to be studied, and so we will follow closely all these studies in order to decide about the future use of the new bands to IMT.
Thank you very much, Sidney. Excellent. Then the other question is very important. We have had the experience in the region that the spectrum award processes have traditionally had a collection approach in which the spectrum is seen as a way through in which states raise money. Nowadays, this approach is being challenged as the ARPU has decreased significantly over the past years. So high spectrum fees become a barrier that it impacts investments to introduce new technologies, especially 5G, and expand them nationwide. So the question is, what have been the main strategies that your countries or your administrations have considered to motivate investments with 5G in 5G's infrastructure and balance with the spectrum pricing approach? So the first speaker will be Alejandro in that order, and we can listen to you now.
Thank you, Jose. Well, yes, as I said before, we do have this big challenge of high annual fees that we at IFT we do not control those fees. Those fees are set by Congress. So we're doing several things. First, we are in the process of defining a new subdivision of the Mexican territory. Mexico is divided into 9 cellular regions, into 65 basic service areas, and now we are proposing also a new division of the Mexican territory into 320 what we are calling partial service areas. With this, we would like to promote, let's say, local operators to enter into the market. We're talking about, for example, wireless ISPs or small operators, local operators that in this way they could enter the auction and pay for the spectrum. We are also planning to do to include some kind of incentives for these new local operators in our upcoming auction. So that's what we are planning to do, since we are also talking for the last 6 years with the Finance Ministry and the Congress in order to lower the spectrum annual fees. We hope that we can do it this year, that is the last of the current administration, and we are going to insist on that and on the importance of lowering the spectrum fees. But I think it's important just to say that we are doing all in our power in order to promote more participation in this upcoming spectrum auctions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alejandro. Now we would like to hear the approach in Brazil from Sidney.
Yes, it's a challenge. It's always a challenge as a governmental organ. But since 2007, ANATEL uses the strategy of IMT spectrum auctions with coverage obligations for less commercially attractive regions. As a second stage, in recent auctions, non-IMT obligations were considered too, in order to improve the telecommunication infrastructure as a whole, in the less commercially attractive regions. So that in our last auction, the 5G auction, 90% of the price was converted in obligations. So we think that a way to challenge this issue is to establish obligations in order to develop the telecommunication infrastructure.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Sidney. Then another important development in the industry is the use of 4G and 5G private networks. We know that nearshoring is a great opportunity for increasing economic growth, as well as Industry 4.0 promises to have more efficient production lines. What policies are being implemented in your countries to facilitate the deployment of private 5G and 4G networks? So let's start first with Mexico to hear from Alejandro.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jose. Yes, I think this is very important. As I said in my introductory comments, private networks are, let's say, getting a lot of importance. We do have some private networks for mining, for example, through this figure that we call secondary use spectrum. That's an authorization that is assigned directly from IFT without an auction process. However, we do have also other mechanisms in which we are working at this moment. It's important to say that we have a 5G committee. In this committee, we have all kinds of industries participating: the mining industry, the automotive industry, So different industries are participating in this 5G committee, trying to express their needs for 5G spectrum and how should we assign that spectrum. And we also have some different agreements with manufacturing associations in order to provide solutions for the private networks as well. So as I said, we are seeing two different approaches. One is to assign private concessions. That's what our regulation states. But the problem is through an auction process. We think that might be good for large manufacturing companies, for example, but also to grant commercial use spectrum as for, let's say, middlemen that could provide the solutions for the manufacturing industry as well. So with those two solutions, again, private concessions and commercial concessions for private networks, we think that we could have, let's say, a complete set of options for private networks. We are planning to do some of these auction processes for private networks as well during late 2024 and starting 2025 as well.
Thank you so much, Alex. And now we have a couple of minutes to hear the experience from Brazil, from Sidney. So thank you.
Related to this issue, regarding spectrum policy, since about 40 years ago, ANATEL decided to reserve some sub-bands adjacent to IMT bands for private networks, so that IMT ecosystem could be used by the enterprise in their own networks or by IMT network operators. Besides the spectrum policy or the spectrum reservation, let's call it, besides this, some regulatory updates were held in order to facilitate, to simplify the private network deployments regarding authorization, licensing of stations, and so on. But we have realized that there is a gap in this market. We have realized that some end-to-end applications, end-to-end solutions are needed. So we are encouraging all the stakeholders of the solutions to develop applications end-to-end for the very verticals, for the very economic segments that need them. So that's a multi-track way to face this problem in order to allow the private networks to develop, the economic segments.
Thank you, Sidney. I think we've already run out of time. There are a few questions in the chat from the audience, which we won't be able to address. So I invite each one of the speakers, if they have time, to review it, or you can send the questions to GSA, and then we'll try to come back with the proper answers. I thank you both for your excellent presentations, and leave Richard to close the seminar.
Great, thanks so much, Jose. And as Jose says, if you have submitted questions we haven't got to them yet, then both the research team will certainly endeavour to answer as many as we can directly after the event. So I'll just close today by once again thanking you and our speakers for joining us today, and particular shout out to Alejandro and Sidney for sharing their invaluable insights. Thank you very much. After the event, you will receive a link to the webinar recording and the slides, and the report, as we mentioned, will be published next week, and we'll share that with you directly via email. Throughout the year, we'll have more events, including snapshot webinars on particular technologies and markets that are being tracked in the Gambod database, spotlights on other regions around the world, and the plenary of the Fixed Wireless Access Forum. Further details on these events and others will be shared on the GSA website and via our newsletter and social channels. You can also see the full back catalogue of past events on the webinars page on our website. Access to the detailed data that lies behind the GSA reports and the webinars is available, as we mentioned, to all employees of GSA members and social organisations. And if you'd like more information about how your organisation can get involved in GSA and access this extensive database, then please do get in touch via info@gsacom.com. For all the latest updates on our research and activities and events, follow us on our social channels. And if you visit the website, you'll also be able to subscribe to our weekly research digest email. So all the reports are delivered straight to your inbox every Monday morning. So finally, on behalf of the GSA team, just want to say once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for our speakers, and we hope to see you again soon at the next GSA event. Many thanks.
Thank you.